Hey there, Matt Hamilton, author of Through Travel and Error, Confessions of an Asylum-Seeking Canadian. Welcome back to my online readings. This week it's chapter 16 called Werner. I think I'll get right into it and I think it will explain itself as it goes on. Chapter 16, Werner. Do you have any triangles? I had been asked some strange questions during my time at Smuggler's Cove. What time do they feed the whales was a good one. Are there any sharks in the ocean was a classic. If I started walking down the beach in one direction, how long would it take me to walk all the way around was still one of my personal favorites. However, do you have any triangles took the cake. The other questions may have been more idiotic, but this particular query was certainly the most unusual. Werner was frantic. This time he shouted, "Do you have any triangles?" It was 3 a.m. The bar was winding down. I was drunk, stoned, and tired. My wits were a far cry from their capabilities. Under normal circumstances, I might have looked at the individual asking such a question and say, okay, what's the punchline? However, this wasn't a normal circumstance. Or should I say, this wasn't a normal person. Werner was a 42-year-old German who had been staying at Smuggler's Cove the past 5 days. Werner was a tad, and I'm being polite saying this, weird. He rarely opened his mouth. In fact, the only time I heard him speak was when he ordered a Coke from me. He would sit at the bar in complete silence and sip his soft drink. He seemed completely oblivious to anyone around him. Occasionally, he would burst into spontaneous, uncontrollable fits of laughter. Those sitting around him, including myself, had no clue what the man found so hilarious. Then, as suddenly as he started, Werner would stop and return to his semi-comatose state of absolute silence. The other bizarre aspect about Werner was that while he never really was anywhere, he gave the impression of being everywhere. You wouldn't see him on the beach or at the pool, but you would find him standing under some obscure bush or detect him standing in a random corner of some random room. Consequently, being asked such a strange question by an even stranger man warranted a bit of apprehension on my part. I hesitantly asked if he meant a ding-ding musical triangle. "Any triangle, man," he anxiously yelled. His nervousness made me curious. I asked him why he needed a triangle. "Defense," he responded. He was growing more aggravated. This was getting more bizarre by the moment, but I was very much intrigued. I decided to pursue my inquiry. I asked him what he needed to defend himself against. "Aliens," he answered with a look of true sincerity and deep fear. I wondered if I should just stop my questions right there and help this poor crazy bastard find a triangle. But answers like that and people like this didn't come along every day. Curiosity forced me to venture even further with my inquisition. I asked if he'd been having problems with aliens. Werner guardedly glanced over his shoulder. "Yes," he said straight-faced. "I've been abducted many times." I was now well past intrigued. I asked him when the last time he was abducted. 2 nights ago, he answered fretfully. There were so many people that came and went through Smuggler's Cove that it was sometimes difficult to remember how long somebody had been staying there. Werner stood out and was by no means easy to forget. If he had been abducted 2 nights ago, that would mean the aliens kidnapped him from the Red Dorm. To confirm this highly improbable scenario, I asked if he had been abducted from the dorm just above the bar, which was continuously filled with a dozen semi-conscious backpackers every night. "Yes," he solemnly replied. I had asked odd questions and I had received odd answers. I didn't know what to say to this poor, desperate, crazy man. There was no sense in trying to calm him down or talk any sense into Werner. He was dead set in his conviction that aliens had gotten to him yet again, and he now needed a triangle of all things to ward them off. I gave the terrified man the racking triangle from the pool table, and he hurried off to bushes unknown. Although brief, my exchange with Werner was possibly the most abnormal conversation I've ever had. Nonetheless, it was moments like this that were the little extra bonuses associated with the traveler's world. There were moments that I savored. You really do meet all walks of life out there, the good, the bad, the ugly, and even those abducted by aliens. Now, Werner actually spent the next 4 weeks in Sinsa, believe it or not. He felt comfortable there, even though the aliens knew where he was. I guess he felt safe. And he would come to the bar every night. And it was over those next 4 weeks that we talked, and I got to know Werner. And a lot of things surprised me about him. he was an extremely smart man. He could talk about everything, but he just believed he'd been abducted by aliens. I mean, he had recollection about his past and being institutionalized and all that, but he still believed he was abducted by aliens. There was no doubt in the eyes of German society, Werner was a few cans short of a six-pack. He did confess that he had been institutionalized as a youngster in Germany. He had vivid memories of the shock therapy that he had been subjected to, along with other horrors he witnessed during his time in the insane asylum. Most of his family had disowned him. He told me that the only person who still cared for him was his grandmother. For obvious reasons, he hated Germany, and if it wasn't for his grandmother still living there, he would never return. Yet, despite the therapy, barbaric treatment, and tough love, he remained firmly resolved that aliens had abducted him on numerous occasions. He explained that the aliens were not the little green bug-eyed lizard types that science fiction had created. Instead, they came in the form of a super advanced mathematical equation from another dimension. I'm not a mathematician, and I had a hard time understanding what Werner was trying to explain. But I doubt Einstein could have followed the complexity of Werner's description of the equations from beyond. Apparently, the angles and symmetry of the triangle would confuse the alien equation. He told me that the aliens had subjected him to a battery of tests, but he couldn't properly describe them other than saying it was more virtual than physical. This was a form of advanced math we were dealing with. He did remember that the pain was unmistakable, unforgettable, and torturous. This accounted for his terror. He had been abducted many times and nobody believed him. I'm not saying I believe or don't believe Werner. I'm saying Werner made me think. No, seriously, he did. I don't know if there's aliens out there. Who does? The universe is massive. I don't know everything about my own planet. So sitting there talking to this extremely intelligent man, he made me think. Like, I mean, what if you're an intelligent person sitting there listening and listening to this little reading. What if you had been abducted by aliens? What would you do? Who would you tell? How would you convince your best friend or families that this actually happened? It would be horrific to have this certainty in you, yet be fully aware that all those you loved thought you were completely insane. The universe is massive. No, it is much, much bigger than massive. It is so big that I can't even begin to get my head around the magnitude of that gigantic, endless, infinite sprawl of space. I won't pretend for a moment that I know everything that may be out there. In fact, it's safe to say that I know absolutely nothing about it, as do most of us living on Earth. Maybe Werner really had been abducted. Who am I to say otherwise? What I did know was that Werner was a kind, gentle man. I also know that his fear was very, very real. Never judge a book by its cover. This important lesson had been reinforced through my encounter with Werner. He may have been a little strange, or maybe he wasn't. What wasn't in question was the goodness in his heart. Werner also taught me to open my mind even more to the possibilities that this world, and perhaps others, had to offer. Who knows what's out there? I barely know anything about the atoms we already know exist, and we continue to make new discoveries and advancements in all fields every day. Who knows what we might find? Who knows what might find us? Maybe, just maybe, Werner was laughing because he knew he would have the last laugh. You know what? I once read 3.9 million Americans had been abducted, or believed they'd been abducted by Americans. Assume that 99% of those people are completely off their rockers and insane. That leaves 1% of intelligent, sane, rational people who were abducted by aliens. That's a big number of people. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed my experience with Werner and meeting somebody who'd been abducted by aliens. If you want to find out more about Werner, myself, and or the book, Through Travel and Air, Confessions of an Asylum-Seeking Canadian, please visit my website, madmattiesworld.com, or Google the title of my name and you'll have a whole smorgasbord of options of where you can get a copy. Until next week, have a great one. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.